Hey everybody, so sorry about that. Obviously, live TV, software glitches happen, everybody. And here we are, part 2. Sorry about the interruption for part 1. I want to thank everybody for coming over to the new one. Sound the trumpets. Thank you as well, Sean Donnelly and everything else. But it proves it's always live because I don't have time to do video editing, any of that stuff. Let's talk about the story today. There's going to be some revealing items here that might be shocking to many, but also it's important to know the truth and have a financial goal. And that's why I do this. Every year I look at the UBS, Bankverein, wealth reports and the Credit Suisse ones too, and I put together a video so we all kind of know where the directions are going and where we stand and what we need to do. Maybe there's an escape from the matrix. We'll talk about that too. Crypto market cap is about 2.4 trillion. Fear and greed is back to 69. Strange number. But I'll be talking about a bunch of very intriguing questions. And these are questions I ask myself every day. So first of all, I always talk about millionaires. And back when I was a kid, a millionaire was something like a unicorn, very special. Now it's very common. So we'll look at some millionaire trends. We'll talk about how borrowing can grow your wealth. We'll talk about global wealth inequality trends, which is quite frightening. We'll look at average versus median wealth and what's the difference. And getting to the Bitcoin part, what is the value of Bitcoin if it captures 1%? And I calculated a whole bunch of very interesting statistics as to where it could possibly go. What if it hits 5%? What does that mean for people? Can they make it to the top 1%? Elite, wealthiest people on earth? These are all the questions I will answer today. Thank you all for coming. And of course, it's not financial advice. And thank you to the mods in the chat and to Patreon. And Polly says, yes, Patreon team. Thank you, Polly, for being part of this. So the inspiration for this video, as you know, I've always done pyramids, wealth pyramids. When I was young, I set myself very strict goals, to retire by a certain age, to be in a certain percentile, in whatever I do, whether it's sports or whatever else. And this is why I love this type of data. I hope you all do too. Dr. The Polar Man, thank you so much. So this is a couple of things inspired by the Global Wealth Report 2024 from UBS, and who used to be my bank, by the way, for the longest time, and the wealth pyramid. So the wealth pyramid on the right, we'll break it down in much more detail, but basically 52.5% of adults in the world have less than $10,000 in savings or wealth. 34.4% have about $10,000 to $100,000 in wealth. 12% have 100,000 to 1 million, and only 1% of the world has $1 million or more. And $1 million is no longer that much. But remember, the world is 8 billion people, so that's a lot of people. We'll break down the numbers. First of all, let's talk about where are the millionaires at? And from this chart, surprisingly, 38% of them are in the US. Despite the US having less than 5% of the world population, it has nearly 40% of the millionaires. Western Europe, excluding the UK, hello everybody here in the UK, 23%. UK is 5%, same as Japan, and the Japanese number of millionaires is actually shrinking. Greater China, 13%, Southeast Asia, 10%, and other 7%. That would include things like Brazil, etc., all these other places. Hey, Linda, thank you for coming. So that's where we are. But this first very shocking statistic I will show you, brace yourselves, don't mean to be offensive, but I think this tells me a very interesting thing, and I'm always trying to find correlations and patterns and data. This took me by surprise. And by the way, Netherlands and the UK, if you calculate how many people we have in Patreon, and on a per capita basis based on population, my two number one countries, or three, are Australia, Netherlands, and the UK. That's because those people in those countries are trying the hardest to escape the matrix. And maybe because they know about this information here that I will just walk you through. This is shocking to me. The most shocking aspect of this chart is the significant expected decrease in the number of US dollar millionaires in the UK and the Netherlands between now and 2028. And while most countries show an expected increase in the number of millionaires, with Taiwan leading the pack at nearly 50%, probably due to semiconductors, the UK and the Netherlands are the only countries projected to experience a decline. And the UK is particularly stark, with an expected reduction of around 15 to 20%, which contrasts sharply with the positive trends seen in other markets around the world. The top places, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, Sweden. The Japanese data has shrunk in the past, but they expect it to increase in the future. So I don't know how they're going to do that with yen. Maybe they have assets in other parts of the world, and that can be a big part of it as well. Also, I've done videos on migration trends, and sometimes millionaires, high net worth people, actually escape high tax regimes and they go to places like Dubai, etc. So this could also be part of it as well. But let's dig into some more stunning statistics. And I'm sorry for all the team here in Europe. I know a lot of you watch this, and the Dutchies like trading, and they can trade crypto tax-free too. But EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Asia, or EMEA, I forget what that means. Europe, Middle East, and I don't know. Africa. The average growth in average wealth per adult since 2008 is only up 41%. You can compare that to Asia Pacific, 122%, and the Americas, 110%. So Europe is significantly lagging behind in wealth creation. And remember, all of this study is in US dollar terms. So if you're going back, call it 16 years, and your wealth has only gone up 41% in dollar terms, you've actually gone backwards, because the debasement is far higher than 41% over the last 16 years. So that's another very troubling, shocking statistic. Now, this is also interesting, and it's a cultural thing. And I know Europe pretty well. And this is the amount of debt growth in EMEA since 2008. Only 8.7%. Asia Pac, nearly 200%. And America's 48.6%. Now, a lot of people think debt is bad. However, if it were not for debt and leverage, I would not be here, okay? Debt, if you can manage it carefully, is a gift. And I use leverage and debt all the time to this day. And if you can borrow money to increase and amplify your returns, whether it's invest in real estate or whatever you want to invest in, it can dramatically increase your wealth. I believe, I cannot prove this, but if you any economists know out there in Europe, I believe the trend for EMEA not to borrow, but to pay cash for things, has kept them back in terms of wealth accumulation. Again, borrow. It's a gift, if you can, or if the country supports it as well. Now let's get back to some more pyramids. There's like an Egyptian show. Here, this is the global wealth pyramid, the breakdown. We are in 2024, so the data was just accumulated for 2023. So we're looking at last year. And there's an estimated 4.8 billion adults globally that have over $1 million in wealth. And the global proportion is about 1.2%, 1.1%, 1.5%, depending on how you measure it. And this small percentage of the adult population holds nearly half of the world's wealth. Craziness. Then you have your $100,000 to $1 million slice. Global proportion is about 613 million people. That's about 12.77%. And this is a significant portion. And then you have your 10,000 to 100,000. This is about 1.608 million people. About 33.5% of the population have literally 10,000 to 100,000. And then most shocking is less than 10,000. You've got another big chunk there that have very, very little wealth. Nearly 40% of the population own less than $10,000, which is sad and shocking. But hopefully we'll be able to get people out with the life raft. Now, another stunning statistic of the day. Over 44% of the highest 1% of wealth is domiciled in the United States and Canada, while Western Europe represents nearly a quarter of it. There was a time, I remember looking at these stats in the 90s in Zurich, Switzerland, and Europe and the US were equivalent. In fact, there was probably a year or two where Europe was wealthier, had more millionaires than the US and Canada. That has changed radically. We're not sure why. Maybe The Europeans aren't borrowing enough. Who knows? I don't know. Let's look at wealth inequality, which is also a very concerning topic. This table presents data on wealth inequality measured by what they call the Gini index. So and it's between 2008 and 2023. And the Gini index ranges from 0 to 100. And a high score of 100 represents higher inequality. So a high score is not a good thing. It's a bad thing. And a lower score indicates a more equal distribution of wealth. And it shows you the delta, the change between 2008 and 2023. And let's dig into this. So rather than look at the eye chart here, I summarized it. These are the countries with increasing wealth inequality. That's bad. South Africa, Brazil, India, Indonesia, Italy, Qatar, Denmark, Taiwan, UK, Mexico, France, Australia, Japan, and Singapore. So in these places, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, which is a sad situation. KT in Europe. Thank you so much. And sorry about the not so pleasant European news, but it's important that we know this stuff. Let's talk about those that are getting better. This is good. This is decreasing wealth inequality. UAE, Dubai, etc., Saudi Arabia, Israel, Hong Kong, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Netherlands, Korea, and Belgium. Not bad. Let me know if you're in any of these places and if you can relate to this data. So this is better than this list that's going in the wrong direction. And then those with kind of very minimal change, Sweden and the United States, 1.3% increase and 2.4% decrease in the US. So again, mixed bag. But that is the inequality piece. Then, and trust me, we'll get to the Bitcoin, mapping this back to Bitcoin as well in a minute. This is also another interesting one. And again, it's always important to know where you fit and where you stand. This is the average wealth versus median wealth. So average wealth is calculated by summing the total wealth of the population and dividing it by the number of people. And of course, the median wealth is the middle value in the list of all individuals' wealth, arranged from lowest to highest. And these huge differences in this data. So also remember, there can be huge impact of outliers. If you have people like super wealthy billionaires, the Jeff Bezos and the Bill Gateses of the world, they can skew some of the data here as well and inflate the average wealth figure, making it appear higher than the typical wealth experienced by most people. That's kind of important to know. So let's look at a couple of things here. The countries with the highest disparities I see are US. Average wealth is $564,000, which is fourth, but the median wealth is only $112K. And the large gap indicates significant wealth inequality, with a small number of extremely wealthy individuals inflating the average wealth figure big time. Switzerland, average wealth is $709,000, first richest place, and the median wealth is $171,000. Despite high average wealth, the median figure shows that wealth is not evenly distributed amongst the population. And that's just how it is there. And then the countries with smaller disparities, Luxembourg, average wealth $607,000 and median wealth $372,000. So everybody on average is doing really, or on the median, I should say, is doing really well in Luxembourg. And Australia, average wealth $546,000. We have a lot of Australians in the audience, that's how I'm calling them out. Median wealth $261,000, which is second, okay, in terms of median wealth. And the Australians, much of their wealth is in the form of property, real estate. And I hope it's not a bubblicious market, because that could ding the data going forward. Let's look at some wealth bands. The reduction in low wealth adults is probably the most striking of this, which is actually good news. So if you look at the red line, it's going down, but again, so is the amount, the debasement of the $10,000 amount. So a lot of people could be just above that at 11,000. They wouldn't fall into this category. There's also an increase in middle wealth adults, a significant increase in the population with between 10,000 and 100,000 and 100,000 to a million indicates that more individuals are moving into higher wealth bands, which is good. The ultra wealthy, the million plus, has been kind of flat. In the year 2000, it was half of 1%. Today, it's 1.5%. But as I always stress, $1 million in a couple of years will not be much. like $1 million purchasing power 8 to 10 years from now will be about 440,000, I reckon, given the money printing that's happening. And to prove how crass this is, this will put things in perspective. This is the impact of debasement. And the reason, we talk about Bitcoin going to $1 million. Yes, it will. But remember, $1 million in the future will not be worth as much as it is today. So the whole thought of being a millionaire, don't get too excited. I don't want to throw cold water on anybody, but I just want to help you to stretch your goals. This is the impact of debasement. Is the effect of dollar debasement in one chart of the S&P 500. It's up 5,500% since 1970. But if you divide it by M2, it's only up 500% when adjusted for inflation. US dollar debasement should be a major concern for investors, and investors need to be very aware of the gobbling power on your wealth. So always factor this into your plan as well. Now, let's talk about Bitcoin and how it ties into all of this and where you need to be in the top 1%. So, first of all, as of the latest data, and we tweeted the UBS global report, the threshold to be in the top 1% of individuals is now about 7.4 million. It's actually gone down from 2021 Credit Suisse report, 7.9 million. So we'll just assume it's 7.4 million, and both banks do things a little bit differently. But let's call it 7.4 million. And as we know from Bitcoin, in my Bitcoin wealth pyramid, to be in the top 1%, and these numbers are as of today, right now, you need more than 21 Bitcoin, and that would cost you just under 1.4 million. To be in the top half of 1%, you need about 442,000, or more than 6.8 Bitcoin. And then to be in the top 1%, 3.6 Bitcoin, sometimes 3.5, it's very close, so about $227,000. And to be in the top 2%, 1.5 Bitcoin, $98,000. And the top 5%, you just need $8,600 worth of Bitcoin, or 0.135 Bitcoin. Now, the reason this is important is perhaps there is a way, if Bitcoin does what it's going to do, it can help people get into that $7.4, $7.8, $7.9 million top 1% of wealthiest people in the world. Now, the Bitcoin Only playlist will be here, and at the end of the video, you can catch it later if you like this type of content. But let's talk about this global wealth. Global wealth was estimated at 474 trillion in the year 2023. You can call that 500 trillion. It's crazy. GDP is about 100 trillion. So global wealth is about 5 times GDP, just for perspective. Now let's talk about how this backs into Bitcoin. And I'll talk about the inspiration as well for this. So Bitcoin, at 1% of global wealth, if you imagine Bitcoin does achieve that mark which we just covered, that would be 1% of 474 trillion divided by 21 million Bitcoin, although there'll only ever be 15 million Bitcoin. Result is the price of Bitcoin will be about $225,766. So if you got 4 Bitcoin, it's easily going to $1 million. Is basically what this is going to say. But the question is $1 million enough? And what does it take to be in the top 1% of wealthiest people on the planet? And the answer is as follows. If you want to be in the top 1% of wealthiest humans, and if Bitcoin is your only asset, you need 32.74 of them, which is crazy. And that assumes Bitcoin is going to $226,000. But I got better news for you, of course, because Bitcoin is going much higher over time. No doubt about that. And inspiration as well for this thought experiment is Carl Menger, who said global wealth in 2022 was 455 trillion. It's up higher than that now. And if Bitcoin captures 1%, one coin would be worth 200,000, and 5%, one coin equals 1 million. The question is, can Bitcoin absorb 5% of global wealth? If it can, this is the result. To be in the top 1%, to be one of the $7.4 million, $7.8 million people, you will need 7.4 Bitcoin, assuming Bitcoin hits $1 million. Now, there's more. So just to give you an idea, it might sound very far-fetched for Bitcoin to hit 1% of global wealth. Put this in perspective, all right? 126 days ago, the Finkster, Larry Fink, just launched a Blackrock Bitcoin ETF called IBIT. Check this out. They have $10.8 trillion in assets under management. They now have $20.9 billion in Bitcoin. Okay, call it $21 billion. Blackrock has been around for a very long time. They own a truckload of assets already after 126 days. It makes up nearly 2% of BlackRock's assets under management, AUM, 1.93% to be specific. So the question is, if BlackRock, the biggest money runner in the world, has now a 2% allocation to Bitcoin, and we go back to this, if value of Bitcoin hitting 1% of global wealth, the answer is, under BlackRock's eyes, it's already at 2%. So this $225,766 is very achievable. And remember, 126 days, bonkers. But there's more. This is the crazy beast. A lot of people think, oh, it's too late. Bitcoin missed the train. No, you didn't. Still early. There's only about 55 million wallets out there. Of course, many people have 10 wallets or more. So yeah, it's less than that of actual holders. But let's assume it is 55 million people, which is not. That's only 0.68% of the population. I reckon it's more like 20 to 33 million people actually own Bitcoin. So it's less than a third of 1% of the population. And BlackRock already own 2% of their AUM allocated to Bitcoin. Bizarre. But check this. There's more people coming after Bitcoin too. This is breaking news from HODL 15. This is another publicly traded company that announced their Bitcoin trading treasury strategy, like MicroStrategy, and Square and Semler and Metaplex in Japan. This firm is called Bitcoin Depot. The ticker is BTM, and it's the number one Bitcoin ATM provider. And if you've been anywhere, you've seen these machines all over the place. But they are going to start allocating to Bitcoin. It's funny because in yesterday's video, I said, you want to pump up your stock price? Just start putting Bitcoin in your treasury. And we showed the MicroStrategy versus NVIDIA since August 2020 as well. Smoked it in yesterday's video. Check that out. Bit of a mini deep dive into MicroStrategy. So this is happening, and this is the Bitcoin black hole. Nothing but goodness. Will Bitcoin get to $227,000 to $1 million in the next few years? The answer is most probably as well. And we're still early. You can't even see the little dot here compared to the rest of the world. So if you're in it, hold on tight. Now let's talk about the ETFs sucking in this thing. And this is the whole thesis of supply and demand. The demand for this thing is going to go through the roof. More treasuries are coming in. The ETFs are gobbling up more than ever. They have over 1.05 million Bitcoin already. Okay. BlackRock has nearly 2% allocated to Bitcoin, and they're gobbling it like mad. But this is just over the last three trading days. The US ETFs have sucked in $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. We'll break down those numbers and show you exactly what that means right now. First of all, day 129 raw numbers. We had the 15th best day ever yesterday. 15th best day from 129 days. I lied to you. I think I said 126 earlier. It's 129. So it took BlackRock 129 days to get to nearly 2% assets under management, which is huge. The demand for this thing is off the hook. Now, let's look at the macro view. I have a new exhibit as well. I'll show you all in a second, but you can see here, big red spike. That is BlackRock. And of course, Fidelity's in there too. ARK is in there. Bitwise is in there too. They're all snacking on Bitcoin. This is the Power Series line. The pink is perking up, and the big pink arrow points to the day we had the 15th best day ever after 129 days, which is monstrous. The amount of Bitcoin taken from the system. Somebody asked me yesterday, what do you mean taken from the system? So if you imagine these ETFs, and I've explained it before, but I'll do it again. There are 9 of them. They are taking Bitcoin from the system. They're buying it. People are buying shares of ETF. And then a day or so later, the ETF will buy the Bitcoin and stick it in a vault somewhere, safe, I hope. But here, the amount of daily issuance from miners is 450, and the 9 ETFs took in 6,500 Bitcoin yesterday in one day. Okay? To calculate how long it takes for the miners to create 6,500 Bitcoin, it's about 15 days. So one day, they sucked up half a month's of issuance. Now, the new exhibit so far, I like to look at things in blocks. So where are we with the post-halving period and everything else? Clearly something is going on. Excuse my very crude chart, but we had the big buying spree that happened between kind of day, call it 10 to day 30. Huge amount of buying happened. And then we had a bit of a lull between day 45 and call it day 80, 90. And then the second phase of accumulation happened. That took us day 81, 82 to day 100. And then we had some dumpage from Grayscale, etc. Some liquidations of Gemini, Genesis, who knows what. Now, I believe we are in phase 3. And that is the next phase of accumulation, where the ETFs are buying a lot and their buying is accelerating for a period of time. Who knows if it's going to last 30, 40 days or 20 days, but it's looking pretty positive right now. And again, that is the story today. So if you have somewhere between 7 and 30 Bitcoin, you will be in the top 1% of the wealthiest human beings on the planet. And I know 1 Bitcoin is a lot. That's why I always stressed since I began this channel, whole coinership, get one because it'll be significant. Hope you like the show. Sorry about the delay in the beginning. And thank you for coming back. Thank you, Sean Donnelly. Thank you, K8. Thank you, Team D Tesla. Thank you, Rusty Bot. Everybody out there in the team. Have a good day. Bye-bye.